It's also important to remind ourselves that the notion of workers' control is as American as apple pie. Kind of impressed, but it's there. In the early days of the Industrial Revolution in New England, working people just took it for granted that those who work in the mills should own them. And they also regarded wage labor as different from slavery, only in that it was temporary. Also Abraham Lincoln's view. There have been immense efforts to drive these thoughts out of people's heads to win what the business world calls the everlasting battle for the minds of men. On the surface, they may appear to have succeeded, but I don't think you have to dig too deeply to find out that they're latent and they can be revived. And there have been some important concrete efforts. One of them was undertaken 30 years ago in Youngstown, Ohio, where U.S. Steel was going to shut down a major facility that was at the heart of this steel town. And there were substantial protests by the workforce and by the community. Then there was an effort led by Stoughton Lynd to bring to the courts the principle that stakeholders should have the highest priority. Well, the effort failed that time, but with enough popular support, it could succeed. And right now is a propitious time to revive such efforts, although it be necessary, and we have to do this, to overcome the effects of this concentrated campaign to drive our own history and culture out of our minds. There was a very dramatic illustration of the success of this campaign just a few months ago. In February, President Obama decided to show his solidarity with working people. He went to Illinois to give a talk at a factory. The factory he chose was the Caterpillar Corporation. Now that was over the strong objections of church groups, peace groups, human rights groups, who were protesting Caterpillar's role in providing what amount to weapons of mass destruction in the Israeli-occupied territories. Apparently forgotten, however, was something else. In the 1980s, after Reagan had dismantled the Air Traffic Controllers Union, the Caterpillar managers decided to rescind their labor contract with the United Auto Workers and to destroy the union by bringing in scabs to break a strike. That was the first time that had happened in generations. Now that practice is illegal in other industrial countries, apart from South Africa at the time. Not now. Now the United States is in splendid isolation as far as I'm aware. Well, at that time, Obama was a civil rights lawyer in Chicago, and he certainly read the Chicago Tribune, which ran quite a good, very careful study of these events. They reported that the union was stunned to find that unemployed workers crossed the picket line with no remorse, while Caterpillar workers found little moral support in their community. This is one of the many communities where the union had lifted the standard of living for entire communities. Wiping out these memories is another victory in the relentless campaign to destroy workers' rights and democracy, which is constantly waged by the highly class-conscious business classes. Now, the union leadership had refused to understand. It was only in 1978 that UAW President Doug Fraser recognized what was happening and criticized the leaders of the business community, I'm quoting him, for waging a one-sided class war in this country, a war against working people, the unemployed, the poor, the minorities, the very young and the very old, and even many in the middle class of our society, and for having broken and discarded the fragile, unwritten compact previously existing during a period of growth and progress. That was 1979. And in fact, placing one's faith in a compact with owners and managers is a suicide pact. The UAW is discovering that right now as the state corporate leadership proceeds to eliminate the hard-fought gains of working people while dismantling the productive core of the economy and sending the transportation secretary to Spain to get them to do what American workers could do, at taxpayer expense, of course. Well, that's only a fragment of what's underway, and it highlights the importance of short and long-term strategies to build, in part resurrect, the foundations of a functioning democratic society. One short-term goal is to revive a strong, independent labor movement. In its heyday, it was a critical base for advancing democracy and human and civil rights. It's a primary reason why it's been subjected to such unremitting attack and policy and propaganda. An immediate goal right now is to pressure Congress to permit organizing rights, the Employer Free Choice Act legislation that was promised but now seems to be languishing. And a longer-term goal is to win the educational and cultural battle that's been waged with such bitterness in the one-sided class war that the UAW president perceived far too late. That means tearing apart an enormous edifice of delusions about markets, free trade, and democracy that's been assiduously constructed over many years, and to overcome the marginalization and atomization of the public. Now, of all the crises that afflict us, I think my own feeling is that this growing democratic deficit may be the most severe. Unless it's reversed, Arundhati Roy's forecast might prove accurate, and not in the distant future. The conversion of democracy to a performance in which the public are only spectators might well lead to, inexorably, to what she calls the end game for the human race.